Everyone is in sales these days. No matter who you are trying to convince somebody of your point of view. This could be direct. You are selling to a customer, hey, buy my item. Or this could be more indirect. For example, you are trying to convince a team member that we need to go with option A and not option B. But no matter where you are trying to convince people around you. This is the beauty of this book. To Sell is Human by Daniel H. Pink. It's a surprising truth about moving others. And this book, I would say, to put it simply, is about genuine selling. It's about moving towards selling in a genuine way and why you need to do that right now. There's been a shift in the customer and seller relationship, and this has come from the internet. It's come from information asymmetry. Consumers are now empowered by a lot of information. They can Google things, they can figure out how good the product is from looking at reviews. They can research. When they decide to buy the product, they already know a lot about it. And so the seller no longer holds an information advantage, and the buyer has the means and the opportunity to talk back. This information advantage the buyer has changes the landscape and changes how you need to sell. You can't just be a sleazy salesman. You need to be genuine and have a genuine interest in your customer. And people these days can tell. They've got an amazing bullshit detector. Amazing. I mean, we are bombarded with so many videos, ads, products that our mind is turned off. We know when something isn't the best for us. So the book goes over 3 kind of principles that you could use to become a better seller. The first one is attunement. It's about using empathy and going towards their point of view. And the book goes into many examples and exercises. It does a really good job of this. It's a great manual for anybody that wants to dive in and say, okay, here's my business, here's my product. How do I go about actually persuading somebody? The second one is buoyancy. Staying afloat amidst the ocean of rejection. No matter what you do in life, people are going to reject your products. They're going to reject your ideas, opinions, thoughts. It's about staying buoyant amongst all that. Lastly is clarity. Clarity is asking the right questions to find the right problem to solve. Part of being an innovative leader is being able to frame a problem in an interesting way, to see the problem really, what the problem really is, before you jump in to solve it. This is all about problem identification. It's about working out what the problem is and having a lot of clarity on what your customer wants. And once again, the book goes into some really good exercises for this. Now, I can't go over all the exercises because there are quite a few, and it goes in depth in all these 3 categories, but I'm going to share maybe 1 or 2 from each of these sections: attunement, buoyancy, and clarity. Okay, so I'm going to go over 1 technique you could use, or sort of idea that you can apply related to attunement, so tuning to their point of view. This is about being a ambivert. Ambivert, well, when you think of people, you think of extroverts and introverts, right? But there's actually one in the middle, and it's called ambiverts. When you think of a seller, you think of this extroverted guy that's smooth and really good at talking, right? You don't think of maybe an introvert so much. But there are introverted qualities that are really advantageous, like listening. And when you look at who's a better seller compared to introverts and extroverts, extroverts are a little bit better, but the people that come out on top are the people that are in the middle, the people that we call ambiverts. These are people that aren't extroverted or aren't introverted, but adopt qualities of both. If you have qualities that are quite introverted, try being more extroverted, try changing your personality more, try to speak more. If you are very extroverted, focus on listening more, focus on understanding, empathizing. The next technique is about understanding. have a conversation with a time traveler. If a time traveler came and you had to explain your product or idea to the time traveler, how would you change the way you talk about it? Now imagine they don't have a notion of what you're trying to sell or convey to them. If they don't have that background, you are going to need to come up with new words or ways to explain what you are trying to explain. And so this is a really good way to figure out how to explain this to somebody else. This exercise immediately changes your assumptions about the understandability of the message. You are forced to care about the worldview of the other person. And that's something we should all be doing a lot more of in the present. Anyone who sells, whether they're trying to convince customers to make a purchase or colleagues to make a change, must contend with wave after wave of rebuffs, refusals, repudiations. This is what buoyancy is, staying afloat amongst the wave of rejections. Here's a technique. It's called Interrogative Self-Talk. Instead of being really positive before a situation like a speech, although that really helps, it's good to be positive, and it's better to be positive than negative. What you want to do is to be a bit more like Bob the Builder. Ask yourself, can we fix this? Can we do this? And the reason you do that is when you start asking questions, your mind comes up with solutions. You ask yourself a question before giving a presentation. Do I need to do it like this or that? How do I present this better? This is shown to help you speak. It's shown to help you present, because not only are you being positive and trying to improve, but your mind is coming up with all sorts of solutions, and these are really advantageous. So, next time you're going into a situation, ask yourself questions, the meaningful questions that are going to help you figure it out. Now I'm going to talk about clarity. In the past, the best salespeople were adept at accessing information. Today, they must be skilled at curating it, sorting through the massive troves of data and presenting it to others, the most relevant and clarifying pieces. Second, in the past, the best salespeople were skilled at answering questions, in part because they had the information their prospects lacked. Today, they must be good at asking questions, uncovering possibilities, surfacing latent issues, and finding unexpected problems. And one question in particular sits at top of the list. So now that we know these three principles, attunement, buoyancy, and clarity, how do we actually go about improving our selling? There's sort of three techniques on what you should do. There's pitch, improvise, and serve. Pitch is about the ability to distill one's points in persuasive essence, trying to realize that less is more, trying to figure out how you can describe what you are doing in as few words as possible to have an elevator pitch. And there's some really good examples in this book. One that I really liked is an example of the guy that actually invented the first really safe elevator. The way he did it, sold the idea to people, is he hired out sort of like a museum area, and he put this elevator up, and he got them to cut the elevator at a certain point so it would start falling. And before that, there were no safe elevators. When he cut the rope, or cut the thing, the elevator started to fall, everybody was shocked. They were like, whoa, what's going to happen? But then the brake mechanism kicked in, the safety mechanism kicked in, and he was safe. He shocked the crowd, but he displayed very simply in, I suppose, the world's first elevator pitch, the fact that his product worked. And that directly conveyed to them that it works, it's effective. You can't get simpler than that. So that's the elevator pitch, is a great way to try to condense what you know. The next is improvise. In the book they show or explain quite a few techniques that come from improv theatre and improv comedy that I really liked. And they go into a bit of detail, go into these exercises. They also recommend quite a few books, which I really want to read now. And companies like Palantir actually get their employees to read improv comedy books, or improv theatre, or before they start work, which is interesting to think about, as Palantir is an engineering company, so you might think, why is the ability to improvise so important? But this book really goes in depth and shows you how improvisation and practicing and becoming better at improvising is such a key or core skill to have. And this is especially important, well, now the fact that previously salespeople would use a memorized list of common answers or objections the client would have. But essentially, if you do that, if they say this, do this. If they say this, do that. But now that's no longer relevant, especially with the fact that there's the internet, there's FAQs, the customer knows a lot more, the way that you need to sell is different. So now to be a salesperson isn't to have a list of what to do and what to say, but to be able to improvise and think on your feet, to be able to identify those problems that the customer may have. And lastly is to serve the customer, to think, would you want to give this product or service to your grandma? You want to treat them like they're your friend, like they're your grandma, to have that genuine interest in improving their lives. Because if your product or service doesn't improve their lives, it's not for them. And not only that, but they might be able to see your disingenuousness when you try to sell. So it's really important, and I guess the whole book is about this, to be a genuine seller. Everybody has a really good bullshit detector these days. We are so exposed to so much bad products and selling. So to serve is to make it purposeful and personal to the customer, to make them, to show them that you genuinely care about them and this product could genuinely help them, that you have their best interest at heart. What I really like about this book is it went into a whole bunch of sample use cases for every point, gave an example, it used a lot of anecdotes and little scientific studies or examples as well to explain these points. And I think it did a good job of it. There were a few that didn't make complete sense, or I think were quite limited. And that would probably be my only gripe with the book, is it might give a little scientific study of, perhaps options. There's so many confounding variables there that you're trying to perhaps overgeneralize, and I felt that the book almost overgeneralized in some of their examples. As an example, they showed how reducing choices increase the amount of sales of jam. This is a common study you might hear in places. And so you might read this and say, okay, I just need to reduce the amount of products that I'm selling. And I think there's power in that. But to overgeneralize it and say that this is perfect in your use case is a bit of an overstatement. For example, we have a Chinese restaurant in my town, and it is popular not because of how few choices it has, but how many choices it has. The menu literally has over 100 items. It is insane. And so you have people that come in because you have people that come in and want to write reviews of every single product. They have Instagram pages where they try to eat every item at KC Cafe. And that is cool, right? That is their selling point. That is one of the reasons people come in, because there's so many options. What am I going to eat today? Something that people need to bear in mind when they read this book or any book is that, in a sense, what might work for somebody else might not necessarily work for your unique situation. So reading this book is about having that level of analytical, critical thinking skills to say, okay, this worked in this case. What are the factors and assumptions that they are understanding this book through? And what assumptions do I have in my case? How different is it? And how, if anything, my product or my service needs to be different or needs to look at this differently. Overall, I would say this is a fantastic book. I would highly recommend it. And I wouldn't even consider it a book on selling. I would consider it more a book on human psychology or persuasion, or even just improving your emotional intelligence and thinking skills, because there are so many useful techniques. And currently this is a book from the library, but I wouldn't actually mind buying this. I think it's a great manual. It goes into many exercises that could be really beneficial for you. So if you like books, self-development books, and you want something that's practical, that makes sense, and that you can apply, I would highly recommend you check this out.